Welcome, everybody, to Your Anxiety Toolkit. Today we have Andrew Cohen and Danielle Cohen here. This is a particularly exciting episode because we have two people with lived experience and two people who are clinicians who treat OCD. Literally, it's like a jam power-packed session. So thank you for both being here.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, so excited to be here. Long-time listener, so I'm just happy to be a guest.
First-time guest.
Long-time listener, first-time
Yes.
guest.
So I am particularly interested first in getting a little bit of an understanding because I've known you guys for a little bit, but I only heard a bit of your story recently at a recent OCD Southern California event. Would you be able to share with us a little bit about your lived experience? Danielle, would you go first?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have OCD. Main theme, I guess it would be categorized as harm. I check a lot of things to make sure I don't, leave the stove on or leave my car unlocked, those kind of things, so that nothing bad happens to people. I'd say that's the main one. And a little smattering of contamination OCD in there as well, but a little bit less.
And when did that start for you?
I can probably trace it back to when I was like 5, honestly.
Right.
With like some symmetry OCD, like I would have to like tense up muscles in like certain patterns and like just right on both sides for whatever reason. And then it just, gradually grew over time and changed themes as it often does in OCD for people. Yeah.
Right.
All the way back.
Okay.
Yeah. Also,
And what,
yeah.
yeah, it's a big one.
It's a big one.
did you say perfectionism?
Yeah.
Yeah. That often kind of coexists along those specific subtypes too, right?
Sure.
Makes it particularly tricky.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Absolutely.
And what about you, Andrew? Can you give us a little bit of an intro on your experience?
Yeah, sure. So, first off, I my OCD anxiety bully monster name is Bitumen. So Bitumen kind of first came into the picture around 4 or 5 years old in form of like more separation anxiety. Really difficult time being away from my parents mainly. And then my first kind of stint with more obsessions really started, I think, around 7 or 8. And it was very much around harm coming to myself or my family. When for some reason, I was watching movies that I probably shouldn't have been watching when I was 7 or 8. Specifically, there's a movie, Terminator. And I loved it. I was very, very into it and would watch it over and over again. But then I just started having obsessions of like, what if this happens? Like what if somehow, some robot is sent back in time? And I knew it was ridiculous. Like I wasn't like going into like a delusional state, but it just felt so scary and so real. So that was like when it got pretty bad. And then it morphed more so in middle school. It kind of Bitumen like went to the sidelines. I was able to stay away from home, sleep out just fine. I was able to watch like those Terminator type movies, nothing really scary. And then in high school, it really hit me with more just right kind of obsessions. So kind of similar to Danielle, I had to kind of have this sense of evenness, specifically with exercising. And my OCD definitely ties in. I for sure had dealt with some anorexia as well in high school and college. So I would be very ritualized with my exercise and also having to like feel even if I was doing like dumbbell bench presses and things like that. That would lead me to stay in the gym for way longer than I would like. And it was just all really consuming. And then this might be a little TMI, but I think this is OCD, so we'll get into the nitty gritty. Regarding going to the bathroom, specifically pooping, I would need to kind of have this sense of feeling completely empty and just like sitting in the toilet I was probably in the bathroom at its peak, probably a total of 5-6 hours a day, broken up over like 1-2 hour increments. You didn't know me then.
No.
And that was, yeah. So that's kind of, where it was it was livable at that point though. Like I was in talk therapy from like 15 years old, just kind of working on anxiety. And then it really shit hit the fan really for me when I was, I think my last 2 years in college. And this is where kind of more of the moral screw and relationship OCD combo really 1-2 punched me. So I was in a very serious relationship, and I never had felt this way about a person before. And I felt such high highs and so much elation. It was amazing. And I, being in college and partied and whatnot, had a couple of incidences where I did cheat. And, that's just so not who I am and so against my value system at the core. And, I guess it ties in also to kind of like real event OCD too, because, when it initially happened, I didn't go and tell her. I was like, you know what, the relationship's new, whatever. It's not, it's fine. We'll see where things go. But as the relationship got more and more serious and the more and more I cared about her, I got more and more anxious and felt so guilty and shameful around the experience, and ended up, I think it was like maybe 7-8 months after the fact, just blurted out and confessed, what happened. And there was this whole big, rupture in the relationship, obviously. And it was terrible and horrible. And kind of through that experience, we worked through it. And then we got, we never broke up, but we were, fighting and things were rough. But then we finally, got to a good place again. I remember her specifically saying, I forgive you. It's okay. I love you. And I remember just feeling so it was like a hit, really, of something. And then, OCD started being like, but wait, did you tell her the exact specifics of what happened that night? But wait, did you tell her that sometimes you'll have thoughts about other girls too when you're with her? Or, but wait, when you guys were kind of in a dating phase, but not really boyfriend and girlfriend, did you tell her about that time you were on Tinder, right? And you could see it went down a very slippery slope. And basically we got into this horrible pattern of me confessing all of these things that have happened. Or then it also got into, did they happen? I don't know if they happened. So I had to tell her just to be safe, right? And I would confess, and there would be this whole big blow up. And it got really, as I'm talking about it right now, it's just like, ugh, so icky. And I got to say, for her, one of the sweetest people, I've ever met, the fact that she didn't run for the hills in this scenario, because it became a daily, multiple time daily occurrence. And then there were times where I was at UCLA where it was so bad that my parents had to come drive down to pick me up because I was just huddled over crying, in a corner basically of her apartment, or the frat house I was living in, in my room, and just non-functional. And I'm missing anything? I guess it's so basically it kind of reached its peak, if you will. We ended up breaking up. She broke up with me the summer that I graduated from college, because it was just to a point where it was everything we would talk about was me confessing. And her having just to sit there. And at this point, it wasn't even things that have actually happened at this point, right? It was all these just thoughts about other girls or other sexual things in general. And then, she broke up with me. I was basically non-functional. Somehow I was able to work, kind of. I was like a zombie. I was working ABA therapy. Don't know how how effective I was at that point. But thankfully, a therapist I was working with at the time, Nicole Sandifer, shout out to her, great therapist, talk therapist. She was like, you know what? This kind of feels like OCD to me. I'm not a specialist, right? I can work with it kind of, but this seems like a whole different level, right? And she thankfully referred me to your old stomping grounds, OCD Center of LA, where I worked with Laura Yoakum, which I just recently found out you shared an office with her. So that's so funny. On the days that I was not there with her, you were in that office.
I know. Isn't that so weird? The small world of that.
Such a small world. So, I was going to very intensive. I was going, I think, 3 times a week for 2-3 hour sessions. And really, at that point, I was kind of just I'm so over this. I need to do the work. This has taken over everything. And I just remember sitting in her office and filling out the Y box and being like, holy shit. Like every single, I mean, not every single one, but the majority of the symptom checklist, I was like, whoa. So then I was able to kind of trace back to like when I was 7, 8 years old, all the way up until, I was 23 when it got really, really bad and needed like actual help. And just like, wow, Bitumen has been present with me for basically as long as I can remember. So then, I did some really, really hard ERP work. And, I actually ended up getting back together with that girl that I was with. And we were together for another, I don't want to say like 8 months. I think in total, like between the two stints, it was like 2 years in total. And things were really, really good. They were awesome. But then Bitumen kind of reared his head in very loudly. And there was also on top of this, and I think this is a good talking point because I think there's a lot of questions related to like legit relationship concerns plus ROCD concerns and all that. So there were relationship dynamic issues. This wasn't a quote unquote perfect relationship, and there is no perfect relationship for the listeners. I'm just gonna preface that. But it kind of reached this peak where I was like, this is not healthy. I can't do this, and I still feel really sad and guilty about how I kind of ended things. But like looking back, I know like it was the right thing to do. And, and then I luckily, I think a couple months after that, started grad school where I met Danielle. And that kind of brings us, I do. How much of our story do you want us to get into at this point?
I'd love to, because I mean, I think, and again, I want to remind listeners, we're going to flip this and then have Danielle at another episode tell her bigger story, because I think this is so isn't it? Like, I feel like it's one of those choose your own adventures where like I'm hearing Andrew's story and I'm going to now go over to Danielle's story and hear the other side of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when you guys, this is what my first question is you both obviously knew you had OCD at that time?
I was very vocal about it because just in like at that point, so I always knew I wanted to be a therapist since I started going to therapy at like 15. But then when I found out I had OCD and then got treated and was like, oh shit, this works. I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to grad school for. So I think I was very vocal about it.
Okay.
I don't know if you brought it up.
I knew I had it because I had been in therapy before, and it was never like so bad that I needed like intensive treatment, but I knew it was there. And I had a therapist that was like, Nicole, she was knowledgeable, but she wasn't a specialist. And she was like, I think it's OCD. And I was like, yeah, I think so too. And we just did kind of like brief, a little bit of ERP. So I knew, but yeah, you were definitely much more vocal about it.
Yeah. And then I think once we kind of started dating is when it more unraveled is not the right word because that makes it sound like it unfolded. That's yes. Things went downhill real quick. No, I'm kidding.
So this is my question. So one of the questions that we have a ton of guest listeners here. So I just want to address one thing is one of the questions was, how do I overcome relationship OCD, or what is relationship OCD treatment? And so Andrew, you had received specific intensive treatment. Can you share what that was?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, one of the biggest components of OCD treatment is the assessment process, getting diagnosed and receive, that diagnosis. And then for me, at least in my personal experience, the psychoeducation was so important, right? Learning about OCD, the doubting disease, if you will, understanding that need for certainty. And, oh my God, I have to know, is this the one? And then so much of specifically with our OCD comes these like romanticized, excessive stories that we come up with of the one and the partner who's going to be the best person ever. So really learning a lot about that, dismantling and kind of, I don't want to say like challenging those thoughts in a way, but more so just like having that knowledge and being like, oh, okay, I can see like how my brain is trying to trick me like that, and I don't have to necessarily take the bait. So that was a huge component for me that was super crucial. And then the mindfulness component of it too, learning how to really step back and go into that observer mode. Before we even started any sort of exposures, Laura and I spent a lot of time working on a lot of mindfulness practices,
Yeah.
right? Kind of attention training, being able to be present and coexist with whatever's coming up. And something that was really beneficial for me too is, because to be honest, when I mindfulness and me have an interesting relationship. When I was going through the thick of it, my mom, who's a lovely Jewish overprotective mother, who I like to think Biderman kind of like that a little bit. Not that she gave me OCD, but it tries to, right? She was always like, oh, Andrew, I hear this mindfulness thing is really, really good. You should try it. You go for a walk, right? Be mindful. Be mindful. So when Laura brought that up, I was like, are you fucking kidding me?
Oh, I can imagine.
Like, this is hippy dippy bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And so that's why I'm curious. So you had received exposure and response prevention with mindfulness. Were you the one, Danielle, did he introduce you to that treatment for your OCD as well? Or had you already learned about it?
I'd learned about ERP, again, very briefly with my therapist, Lori Allen, shout out to her. Again, not a specialist, but she knew a good amount about it. And we did like very basic ERP. The mindfulness, I would say, was a new thing. We didn't go as much.
Yeah.
So,
Andrew, did your mom introduce Danielle to mindfulness as well?
Thankfully not. It's actually really funny. I have a very vivid memory of us sitting in bed one night and you were like stressed out about something, and I like was like, can I just pull this sheet out? Like, let's go over this, because I like have an awesome psychoeducation sheet on mindfulness that I use with clients, and I was like, let's just go through this, please. I don't think she was I don't think it was the right time, but
in bed.
Yeah, pillow talk, classic observing, all that stuff.
I love it. So when you guys got together, Danielle, question for you. Did Andrew share, either of you can answer this question, but was relationship OCD the main issue that was explained to you or you were prepared for?
I think so. Because you, pretty early on, you took me to Laura with you. So that was cool.
Oh, can you tell me about how did that happen?
I think it was really more preemptive. You were like, I have ROCD. I really like this relationship. I want it to work. And like, here, let's like have you educated about it specifically. Meet my therapist. We'll talk about, how to respond and all that kind of stuff, psychoeducation.
Because I remember like when we were starting to get more serious, it was definitely Biderman was like really bubbling up and I was like, no, I'm not going to allow this to get in the way of something that, is really important. So like, I want her, like, let's get on, team Andrew here to kick the shit out of Biderman, if you will.
Yeah. So cool that you did that you guys went. And what was that like for you? So for you, Danielle, you got some psychoeducation about specifically relationship OCD. Did you know what that meant?
I don't think I like really had heard of it that much, but like I understood that it was OCD, which I very much know. So it was understandable, and I just translated it to my understanding to that particular theme information.
And okay, amazing. And so for Andrew, how was it the same exact symptoms with Danielle, or did it morph a little? What did it look like in your relationship?
So it's funny. It was kind of the same exact symptoms in a way. So the way mine manifests is I have a lot of obsessions of, should I have broken up with my previous partner? Should I have stayed with them? Would that have been a better relationship? Would I be happier? Would I be more fulfilled, more content? A lot of that. So when I was with my previous partner, when ROCD really looked in, there was this, it doesn't really matter, but basically there was this other girl that I had a previous relationship with. And it was starting to like really pop in my head all the time and really get in the way. So when we started getting more serious, my mind started going to my college girlfriend, the one where OCD really popped up of like, oh my God, did I allow OCD to ruin this? And, is Danielle really good for me? And was this other woman, better for me? And all that kind of stuff. So it was starting to kind of infiltrate that. And I noticed for me, I was wanting to like do confessions and stuff. I don't know if I did, maybe here and there, but we wanted to kind of just be on top of it.
Right. How did that feel for you, Danielle, to know that he was having these obsessions? some of my patients get really insecure about that. I mean, I understand if you don't understand OCD, maybe you would, but what was your experience, or what advice would you give for a partner who has a partner with relationship OCD and are having those intrusive thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm probably not the example of that. I was very, I knew OCD, I knew what it was. I have it myself, so I kind of knew more than maybe the average person would know. So therefore, I wasn't super insecure about it. I didn't really feel, jealous or anything like that. But I know that that's not like the normal experience. The normal experience is probably to, internalize that and, feel some type of way about it. So I would say, like, definitely do psychoeducation. If your partner has a therapist, go do what we did and do, some psychoed sessions and, accommodation reduction sessions, read some books. That would be my advice, because that really helped.
Yeah. Listen to this podcast episode, which you're currently doing, so you're on track.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, Andrew, so that's so helpful to know. And I think you were very lucky, Andrew, for more reasons than one, because she's fabulous. But you're so lucky she understood.
Well, so yeah, there was one situation. I'm not gonna lie, like Bittaman really was loud in the beginning, and it does have its flare-ups. But like a couple of months into the relationship, something happened with us. It wasn't even like a big deal, but OCD was like, oh shit, no, this is bad. Bail, abort. And I actually tried to break up with her.
You did.
Yeah, and she like sat. We were like talking. I was like crying, and freaking out because I was in an OCD spiral. And she was just like, hold on. No. We're not going to do this right now.
I was like, no, I'm not letting you break up with me. Sorry. Sorry.
You're like, this is not on the schedule today. I'm sorry.
No, this is absolutely not.
Maybe tomorrow.
Yeah. We're not doing it at this moment. And I think that was, in the moment I was like, oh my God, see, she's so controlling, or whatever it might be.
She won't even let me break up with her.
Yeah. But it's so, and I think for people who don't understand ROCD or OCD in general, like that can sound like, oh, is that a red flag in a relationship? But just like the obsessions I was having were just so not pertinent, So I don't know. Thank you for not allowing that.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah.
This just blows my mind. It is okay. So wait, let me wrap my head around this. You were in a complete spiral, but you didn't catch that it was OCD, or you kind of knew it was OCD?
I'd say like 50-50.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you were going with the bail.
I was fully in. Bittaman and I were real tight at that moment. He hooked me.
Okay. You went to her and you said, we have to break up. She identified the OCD. And you said, not today. We're not breaking up today.
Not today. Perhaps.
Okay.
This
is awesome. This is awesome. So,
and then when some time passed, like an hour or two, or even the next day, I was like, oh, that's good. I'm glad I didn't do that. That would have been better.
Oh my gosh. But I'm really interested in this 50-50 that you experienced, because I think that's such the experience. So can you tell me, for someone who you knew what OCD was, you'd had it impact a relationship before, but Bittaman, the name of your OCD, would you say was manipulative or convincing, or like what was it that got you to listen to that 50%? To go and break up.
Attempt to break up.
Right.
The failed attempt of breaking up.
Thankfully.
Yes, thankfully. Man. I think it uses, and I talk about this with clients too, and honestly, just something that's been helpful in my recovery is being able to identify like the little tricks it uses. Like it can kind of be like this, putting on this mask of like, no, I'm looking out for you. Like this is in your best interest. Like this isn't going to be a safe or healthy relationship, and you really should reconsider this. And then if I kind of like try to challenge that in any way, or not listen, if you will, use my non-engagement responses and whatnot, then it kind of turns up the ante and will start kind of shaming me like, you're a fucking idiot. What are you doing? Are you going to be this abuse victim? And there's no abuse. I want to clarify this. Yeah.
I'm nice.
She's nice.
Sorry, my sense of
Danielle, you're the best. I love you so much.
Oh my God, that was funny.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So like it will really, really grip me in with these completely catastrophic, like, you know, like a Hollywood-esque screenplay, big ass stories, if you will. Like, oh, you're gonna be this abuse victim and you're weak and you're not good. So like it'll kind of start with like that loving, caring, compassionate, like I'm just looking out for the best of you. And if you don't listen, then it's kind of just like a spoiled asshole.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh, and that's painful.
it's so painful.
Like there's a lot of criticism that you kind of like sounds like you were abused by Bitterman too, right? Like that's the paradox of this, of like it's abusing you with mean words, telling you that the nice Danielle is the problem, right?
It's such a paradox.
Yeah. Okay. You actually touched on one of the questions that somebody asked, which is how to know the difference between real concerns and ROCD. How might someone wrap their head around that? And Danielle, you can jump in too as a clinician.
Cool.
Yeah. Do you want to go first or should I?
Sure. Let's do one.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times I point to if there's a sense of urgency, like
Mhm.
example, like I have to break up with you right now. That's a pretty good indication that it's OCD.
Yeah. So kind of piggybacking off that, the urgency component is a fun way to identify Bitterman in the sense of, you know, at the end of the day, our brain's trying to protect us. You know, it has no ill intent. It wants to prevent bad things from happening to us, whether that's literally life-threatening things or just uncomfortable feelings.
Yeah.
Right. So urgency is always going to be there. And I always kind of take the approach of, look, if it's legit, not a life or death situation, if you're not standing next to a fire or, you know, if someone's not pointing a gun at your head or whatever it might be, or you're not actively being in an abusive relationship, you're not being hit, you know, emotionally, verbally attacked, then it's okay to wait to make a decision. Right? Like, let's not, and I knew there was another question, I think, about like, what do I do if relationship OCD is really loud and like don't want to break up? And this kind of ties into that too. Of, you know, like pause, wait, you know, delay. I love the delay, the compulsion. That's one of my favorite tools for myself and giving to clients. But so the urgency component, also another thing too is it's important to note that like the obsessions or the doubts that one has when they have ROCD, they're normal in the sense of like relationships are difficult. Whether it's, and I think with relationship OCD, it's important to note that it's not just intimate relationships, right? It's family relationships, so parent, child, siblings, whatever it might be. It can even be one's relationship with God, right? Or some spiritual thing, like how do I know I'm connected enough to God, right? So it's normal to have these doubts, right? And if there is a concern that's really bothering you, it's kind of eating at you a bit, it's okay to talk about it with your partner, right? Now, what OCD likes to do is it likes to be extra and excessive, right? So like, you know, at times, does Danielle, yes, she is nice, but does sometimes she snap? Yeah, as we all do, right? Well, your OCD, which you'll talk about in another episode, Chester, like, and that's the kind of the dynamic of like when Chester goes off, it triggers Bitterman and vice versa. Right? Like living in this. So when that happens, I do think it's important when we're both calm to be like, hey, like what happened and address it, right? But what I do notice, if we do come to a resolve, Bitterman will be like, wait, but that didn't feel just right. Or you need to talk about it again. Like this, something's off. Right. And when it's like it's been addressed, but then it keeps coming up, I like to say like that's when we want to treat it more like OCD. Right? Let's allow the thoughts to be there. Let's really put our energy into the relationship, lean in, get closer, you know, those kind of things.
So Danielle, post fight or post disagreement, you've maybe gone through a good resolve or maybe not a great resolve. Like I think we don't always do it perfectly. How do you know if if Andrew is beginning to be compulsive, and what do you do?
Okay. Yeah. Well, one, he'll be very quiet, which if you knew him, which you do, but like listeners, he's not quiet.
I'm not quiet.
So if he's quiet, something's going on up here.
Okay.
That's an indicator. Like when he'll just say, like, I can't even think of an example, but when you say something about our relationship or about like us, I'm like, that's a compulsion.
Yeah.
So it happened last night, actually. Yes. When we were watching, what was the show?
Oh, the show we watched.
Yeah, with the Jewish rabbi and the shiksa.
Nobody wants this. Oh, that's right. Yeah, nobody wants this.
Nobody wants this. We were sitting there watching it, and there's a scene in it where the rabbi's son introduces his shiksa. By the way, shiksa to the listeners means a non-Jew, basically.
That's all.
Yeah. Introduces this girl to his very Jewish mother, and she's like being horribly mean to and just like not inviting because she wants him to marry a Jew. And then, she's like, I'm going to do that. If Asher, our son, brings home a non-Jew, a goyim, a shiksa, and then I know she's joking, right? Partly, but then my OCD was like, oh my God, is she like not an inclusive person? Does this mean I'm with someone who is just not, a good person? Would my ex do that? Would my ex do that? Those kind of things. And I got really quiet. Mm-hmm. And you were like, what's going on?
I'm like, you're being weird.
I was like, you're being weird.
And so you caught it pretty quick.
Yeah.
And then, so what do you do, Andrew, when she says that? Does that make you feel more Biderman? Does Biderman get more involved, or does that pull you out?
No, it kind of pulls me out. It really helps unhook and ground me, honestly, because it's just like, oh, yeah, what? Let's rein it in, right? Because another going back to the question too of how do you know it's like ROCD more so? If you're like future tripping so much and dealing with these what if kind of scenarios too that aren't actively happening, like that is a pretty good indicator you're also dealing kind of with the OCD. So I was literally, my son's 15 months old today, and I was going into, oh my God, when he brings a partner home. And it's like, Jesus, man.
Yeah, like something that might happen in like 15 and a half years or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think you bring up a good point too, Danielle, in that one of the core compulsion people with relationship OCD is to ruminate. And it sounds like that's what he's like, you can see him, you pointed to your head for people who are listening and aren't watching on YouTube, like you pointed to his head as if he was ruminating something out in his brain.
Yeah. And Biderman's so tricky because it feels so productive. It feels so, I'm like, yeah, I'm doing something good here.
Yeah.
I mean, majority, I would say like 95 to 99% of the time, I'm very good at catching Biderman. But, it's OCD and it's tricky.
It can feel so real. Yeah. How do you navigate genuine relationship issues in the company of OCD? Do you have parameters or rules, or is it just that you work on communication? I'm assuming you guys have disagreements.
Oh yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Which, by the way, for the listeners, is normal.
Yeah.
In relationships, doesn't mean you're in quote unquote a bad or not good relationship.
Yes.
Yeah.
Something to note. That's the only reassurance I'm giving this podcast.
Ah, there you go.
You want to start? I mean,
that's a hard one. I feel like.
Yeah. I think it's actually a good example because we're not best communicators at times. We're both marriage and family therapists. And sometimes we really suck at communicating. Sometimes, I will totally go into, just like yelling. Sometimes you'll go into name calling kind of stuff. And then it's like we're 2 3-year-olds tantruming at each other on a playground.
But I'm nice.
But
just make sure everybody knows.
Yes, yeah. Because if you have to say it over and over again.
We're going to start not believing you, Danielle.
No. You're like, I'm a good person, I swear.
The boy who cried wolf.
I'm being really nice about it.
I think there is that's kind of the overlap between like, could our communication be better? Absolutely. OCD aside,
Yeah.
I think being with a partner, we're different humans. Yeah, we have very similar values, which is really great, but they're not exactly the same. They're not, totally always going to line up. So for us, I like the idea, honestly, of like the rules kind of thing around it, of like when to communicate it. I will say, like I said, like she's getting and I'm getting a lot better at not having an argument over OCD and over an OCD issue. Where I notice it does get a little tricky is when there is something that happens, we talk about it, and then the OCD kicks in after, and we're going to continue visiting it. But I feel like I'm actually really good at not. Right?
Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And then I don't know. Do you want to add anything to that?
I came up with a phrase that I want to like trademark, I think, in preparation for this podcast.
Okay. It's yours. Once you say it publicly, it's yours.
It's mine. Sorry, everyone who might think of it. When in doubt, don't try to figure it out.
There you go. There you go.
If you're having any sort of doubts, there's no downside to responding to it with mindfulness and ERP, right? If it's a real relationship concern, you can come back to it.
Yeah.
If ROCD, great. You just use your mindfulness ERP skills. Awesome.
Right.
So I think the act or the behavior of trying to figure out your thoughts is in and of itself a lot of times a compulsion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
Trademarked. You got it. You got it in the can.
I guess one asterisk to that, and this is obviously if there's no legitimate abuse going on in the relationship, any sort of safety concerns happening.
Yeah. I think it's really hard. I mean, I've been married 21 years. There have been seasons in our marriage where I wasn't even that sure if it would. There's some hard times we've been through, and I've always thought about we just keep making the decision to be together, and that is a huge piece. And I don't have relationship OCD, now does my husband, but I always feel so sad for people with relationship OCD because it gets involved in a normal relationship pattern where there are seasons of it being really hard.
So I really appreciate what you said of you making the choice to stay.
Yeah.
Right. Because, and I think this also ties into the idea, and I love Disney, but I hate Disney for this.
Yeah.
The idea of kind of having the one or the person, just your soulmate. And maybe, I don't know, anything's possible, right? Maybe there is that. However, at the end of the day, I think John Grayson talks about this. You've had him on the podcast, I believe. He talks about this idea of like second best.
Yes.
Yeah, like the idea of like, look, there's 7 billion people in the world.
Yes.
There's someone that's going to be better. I mean, probably, right?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, if you're going to continuously search for that and not actually connect with the person, are you really ever going to get that satisfaction?
Yeah.
Fulfillment? And you won't, because you're constantly doing that. And one thing that ROCD does, and it's such a bastard because, sorry, I cuss a lot for the listeners. I get passionate. Okay. It's just so insidious, is it doesn't allow you to be present in the relationship. I'm not experiencing Danielle as she is, which is a nice person. Okay, everyone? Nice person. No, but it really doesn't allow you to experience the partner as they are, because you're experiencing them through ROCD's eyes.
Yeah.
And when I'm hooked, everything it's looking at is just so skewed.
Yeah.
And that's why I think mindfulness is so crucial too, is like being able to step back and like notice, like, yeah, those thoughts are there, they're happening, and I can choose to be present with my wife.
Yeah.
And I think when I'm able to get into like lock into that mode, it's like so, I don't know, it's just peaceful.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the questions that somebody asked was around intuition and instinct. And we've kind of touched on this already, but it was one of the questions that language was used multiple times, like how to know. And I think it goes into like this idea of the one too, like that you've got to, you're supposed to know right away. Can you speak to that, either of you?
Funnily enough, right away kind of thing. We met during orientation, our first day of grad school.
This is good.
We didn't like each other.
No.
What's not to like? She's so nice.
No, I was just.
What was it?
Well, because she was like, I'm obviously loud, can be a little bubbly in your face, right? And she's a little bit more timid and shy. I just combined it.
Shimid is the word.
Gotta trademark something.
Yeah. And like I was just like, oh, okay, like, sure. And then what did you think?
You were annoying.
And then we had classes together, and we would just sit next to each other and just flirt a whole bunch, and I don't know, we just kind of blossomed into actually we grew on each other, if you will. Yes.
Yeah.
It's you.
But that's so interesting because did your OCD not completely go crazy over that, Andrew? Like,
it still does. I mean, it still tries to get me hooked into that.
Yeah.
And luckily, I've been very good at being like, okay, yeah, maybe, sure, cool, thanks, bro, cool story.
Yeah. Right? Did it impact you when you had a baby?
Yes, actually, yeah. I just remember being in the hospital.
Oh yeah.
What happened?
With changing him and stuff, because I couldn't do anything.
Yeah. Oh my god, this is just again how it goes so against your values, and I like to think of myself as a very empathetic, compassionate person. Probably good since I'm a therapist,
yes.
But
pretty important.
Yeah, but Danielle, had a very intense birthing experience, and we don't have to get into that. That can be part of your story too.
Sure.
Yeah.
But basically, like after Asher was born, I had to do a majority of the legwork, changing him, feeding him, burping him, all that kind of stuff, because she was bedridden for a while. And then OCD's like, whoa, she's not doing enough. She needs to be a better mom. Maybe my ex would have been a better mom. All that kind of stuff. And I'm just like, try to enjoy Asher, hold my newborn. And Bitterman's just like, no, not going to allow it.
Oh, wow. It does. You said insidious. It can attack. I wondered that. I've even had clients who felt once they had a kid that they were like now locked in with their partner.
Yes.
And that was really triggering for them, that like marriage was one lock in, but then to have a baby felt like a real scary commitment.
You can't divorce your kid.
No. Yeah.
No, you definitely can't. Yeah, no, I'm actually glad you brought that up, because that comes up as well, right? And thoughts of like, oh my God, like what if we do get divorced, I'm still tied to her some way, and whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So it definitely gets in there.
Yeah. Danielle, I know I want to be respectful of your time. What advice would you give I'll give you some time for you also to share about you, and we're going to move to your next episode. But is there any specific piece of advice you would give somebody who is the partner of somebody with relationship OCD?
Yes. Well, I gave it the advice of do, the psychoeducation and go to therapy with your partner and, do research and all that. I think that number one, do that. Number two, I would probably say the same thing. My cute little phrase of when in doubt, don't try to figure it out. Like, don't get in your head about figuring out, what he's doing or she's doing or they're doing. Just pause and see what happens. Don't, respond with urgency on your side either. Just take a beat and figure it out together.
Great. And what about you, Andrew? What advice would you give to someone suffering with relationship OCD beyond or even repeating something you've mentioned today?
Yeah. Well, one, I think just the biggest piece is I feel for you. I'm giving you a virtual hug at the moment, because it's not easy. And I think going to the idea that OCD attacks the things you value the most, like, it makes sense. If you really love your partner, if you really value intimate relationships and commitment and things like that, it's going to latch onto it. Now, on that point, you can't control what it's going to latch onto. So instead of trying to put your energy into this emotional and thought control agenda, really lean into coexistence with your mind. Also, I'm a huge ACT fan, and Russ Harris is the happiness trap, and a lot of that was very, very beneficial for me. The idea of thanking your mind for doing its job. I think we really go into suffering and struggling when we go into this overly emotional control agenda, trying to get rid of the thoughts. And that's really more so where the struggle comes in. That's what makes, I think, OCD the most difficult, is that tug of war you play with it. And once you kind of get to a place where you understand you don't have to play that game, it's extremely freeing and liberating. I'm not perfect at it. I always tell this to my clients too. I specialize in OCD. I talk about this so much. There's days where I'm like, I don't want to talk about OCD anymore because we talk about it so much. But I specialize in this, and I have it, and I still do compulsions sometimes. So when you do inevitably do a compulsion, it's okay. Be compassionate with yourself. And that doesn't mean you're letting yourself off the hook or not holding yourself accountable, but just look, yeah, that happened. Cool. The next moment's different. Let's problem solve if we have to, and figure out what we can do moving forward to get better at coexisting with OCD.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
Where can people hear about you guys? Where can they get in touch with you? And then Danielle, let's schedule Danielle's for part 2 of today's conversation. Where can we get a hold of you if they wanted to?
Yeah, so Danielle and I were in practice together out in Westlake Village, California, kind of down the street from Kimberley. Cohen OCD Therapy. So if you just go to cohenocdtherapy.com, you can find out information about our practice. We see clients in person and virtually in all of California. We also have 2 associate therapists, so we're able to offer lower fees and sliding scales. We want to be able to help as many people as we possibly can. And additionally, OCD SoCal, Southern California, I'm on the board of that. It's a wonderful organization, the affiliate for the International OCD Foundation. So if you want to put all that kind of stuff in the show notes and all, I think going back to the question of, what can you tell someone suffering with it? Just educate yourself. Surround yourself with community that has it, because that has been one of the most healing components of having OCD, is being able to be around others.
Yeah, who get it.
Who get it. And I can't tell you how many times I've been in therapy where they're talking about, you have attachment issues, let's dive into that. Let's analyze the shit out of it, and don't work.
No.
It don't work.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because we should have actually gone through that, is that there is a lot of therapy that can make it so much worse.
Yeah. And I could add a little bit on it, or I know you have to go. Well, I think I can't, there are countless sessions I can remember of going in and comparing, my relationships and my past relationships, doing pros and cons lists, and really diving into that and understanding, oh, well, maybe you're having this insecurity because when you were a kid, this happened with your parent, or this happened. And, in the moment you kind of get you feel these, and this is another kind of intuition versus gut thing. I always tell people when they're in the midst of OCD, don't trust your gut. It is not time to trust your gut, right? Let's get through treatment and don't make any big relationship decisions when we're in the midst of it, right? Going back to kind of your trademarked, don't figure it out kind of thing. But I can't tell you how many of those quote unquote aha moments I had in therapy when I was like, oh, yes, that makes so much sense. That's why I'm having these thoughts. And then I'd be in session, and 2 seconds later, it'd be right back. And I'd be like,
yeah. Exactly. Yes, that's so true. And it can feel so productive, soon we're going to have complete clarity on this problem, but you just don't get it.
Yeah, no, you don't. That's the paradox of it. The more you pull, the more you try to figure it out, the deeper you're going to get. And one other last thing, sorry. I think something that really helped me and benefits me is doing compulsions completely takes away your confidence.
Yeah.
In life, and your ability to handle hard things, do hard things, all that kind of stuff. And I've noticed since pulling back a lot on compulsions, I feel more confident, not certain, right? But confident in the relationship. Yeah. I feel that we can get through the inevitable hard stuff that happens.
Right. So powerful. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. I loved listening to you guys. I can't wait to hear all of this, but on your side of the story, Danielle. Thank you both for coming on.
Yeah, we'll text schedule.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys.
Have a wonderful day.
You too.